Hi, everybody. Welcome to Elle Said What. I think I may be about a minute early, and everything was nice and calm and quiet until I got ready to hit the go live button. And then everybody with two legs and four legs decided to start running around my house. So, today, what I want to talk about a few things. Mainly, what I want to talk about is Brad Holder, a viable suspect in the murders of best friends Libby Jarman, 14 years old, and Abigail Abby Williams, 13 years old, found murdered February 14th, 2017 in Delphi, Indiana. And before I get into whether or not Brad Holder is a suspect, I want to mention really quick that after the the first confession, according to the prosecutor in this double homicide case, defendant Richard Allen has confessed, quote, no less than 5 times, end quote. Hi, Simon. Hi, Legend. Thank you guys for joining me. And according to the prosecutor, well, the defense attorneys, Baldwin and Rozzi, they went to see their client the next day after their client allegedly confessed over a jailhouse phone to his wife that he was guilty, that he did it, that he murdered these two girls. Well, hey, me and mines. And so the attorneys go there the next day and they come out and say their client, Richard Allen, is showing symptoms of psychosis. He seems schizophrenic. These are their words. And that these confessions, which is why I call them alleged confessions, because the confessions are being contested by the defense. These confessions are not voluntary because Richard Allen was under mental and physical duress that diminished his mental capacity to the point. How you doing, Too Big? Welcome. That diminished his mental capacity to the point that the confessions are not within constitutional limits. Okay. Now, McClellan, the prosecutor, he's a sharp guy. And McClellan says, listen, there are no less than 5 confessions. These so called symptoms of psychosis didn't show up until after the confession, the first confession. And if the defense want these confessions thrown out, then we need to take these confessions one by one and we need to parse them up so that we can see the circumstances of each confession. So, confession number one is allegedly to his wife, Kathy, who reportedly abruptly just ended the call. She hung up on her husband, right? So, after that, I read in one paper, he confessed to his mother that he also confessed when he had these inmates and guards outside of his cell that he made incriminating statements. So, the reason that I bring up the confessions is because after the confessions, the defense immediately comes with their client is showing symptoms of psychosis. So, what happens, right? What happens if the defense can get the court to order psych evaluations? And what happens if Richard Allen is somehow found incompetent to stand trial, right? So, Indiana has a rule where there has to be multiple psychiatrists or psychologists. The court orders the test. It's pretty bureaucratic after that. The court and the defense would submit forms. The forms would have the probable cause affidavit, the charging information, all of that, his biographical information, his social security number. So he will be placed in the Division of Mental Health and Addiction, DMHA. And inside DMHA is Family and Social Services Administration. And that is who handles criminal psychiatric patients for evaluation. Well, how long would he be there? Well, when I started working in law, I would tell people if somebody's found incompetent to stand trial, right? The minute that they're diagnosed to where they are competent, that they now can understand the proceedings against them and they can participate in their own defense, they go to trial. If that person is not found competent to stand trial, well, they just languish. So there's really not a big advantage to being found incompetent to stand trial. Now that is distinct and different from a guilty plea by reason of insanity. So mentally incompetent to stand trial. Indiana had a case not too long ago where a woman was facing up to 3 years in prison if she were convicted. She was diagnosed as schizophrenic, and mental health experts said she would not likely ever be competent enough to stand trial. So she's in the state psychiatric hospital for 3 years. Well, she was only facing up to 3 years in prison. So her attorneys took it to court. Can she be kept in the psychiatric unit longer than the time she would have served in prison? And the court says, no, that's fundamentally unfair. But the court also said that time spent in a state psychiatric hospital being evaluated, where they're trying to restore your mental capacity so that you can stand trial, does not equate to time served in a county jail. So if you're in there, if Richard Allen were in this psych unit for a year, right, and then they say we've restored him enough to where he can go to trial, he doesn't get a year time served. Now, legend, when years ago we knew of two state hospitals that took criminal psychiatric defendants in the state of Indiana. One was described as decent, the other not, not so good. And one of the reasons is the state of Indiana is hurting for staff. So the evaluations can take a long time because they're short on psychologists and psychiatrists. So now there's like a 6 month limit, right? And when you think about a hospital with criminal defendants, you're dealing with people who have real mental problems, right? So, the voice in there's when you look at the number of patients in there compared to the number of physical brawls, it's a pretty high number. But is that an issue with Richard Allen? Richard Allen would be facing life in prison. So, it's possible, theoretically speaking, he could, be said he'll never be restored. He's incompetent to stand trial. He'll likely never be competent. He's facing life in prison. But these are the two hurdles. Richard Allen has to have multiple psychiatrists or psychologists convince the court that he does not understand the legal proceedings against him and that he cannot participate in his own defense. And there's no way that the defense is going to have him evaluated and the state isn't going to have him evaluated by their person. And the judge is not bound to go by the psychologist or psychiatrist recommendation. It's still up to the judge. So that's what I wanted to say about the hurdle of being found incompetent to stand trial. But my guess is if the defense can get anything about his mental state being debilitated, they want the confessions thrown out. Well, a lot of times, most of the time, well, this is the truth. A lot of times, what psychologists and psychiatrists consider incompetent to stand trial, the law does not consider that incompetent to stand trial. The law says if you do something, if you have a moment of clarity, if you are mentally ill and you commit that act in a moment of clarity, then you can still you're competent to stand trial, right? So if you're accused of, right, if you're accused of trying to clean up a crime scene, according to the law, that shows mental competency. You're trying to hide a bad act. You don't want to get caught. Your brain is working just fine. So Richard Allen suffered from depression most of his adult life, and we talked about it with the lawyer and the legend. His attorney says that he's being tortured. And I'm going to tell you something. Even though his attorney says the confessions contain things that he has not been charged with, for instance, Richard Allen allegedly said that he, quote, molested, end quote, the girls, right? Confessions, even true confessions, will leave out some things, will put in extra things. Okay. Now, there are signs of false confessions, and those signs are pretty easy to spot. Right, there are huge things. That was my thing in wrongful confessions, false confessions, and I've got a video on here. But there are huge red flags that are ignored when there's a false confession. The little bit that I've heard, I don't know. I don't know that that's enough to get his confessions thrown out. But I'll tell you this: even if some things are added in, even if some things are thrown out, if a jury is allowed to hear a confession, it is a hard thing for the state, for the defense to fight. You say, man mine said he feels guilty. Well, this is the thing, man mines, right? If Richard Allen did this, he worked at that CVS every day. He was in Delphi every day. He saw, posters up of those girls. Nobody said he acted strange. So if his brain has turned on him, right, and there's some sort of guilt, my guess is it might be regret because he got caught. Because if the defense is right and one of those girls was left completely naked, that is, leaving this victim with, there's no dignity in that. It takes nothing to cover her. And a lot of people wonder why this at the crime scene, why that at the crime scene. If the prosecution is correct and Richard Allen, it only started, right, not eating, not sleeping, and he started playing in his feces after the confessions, then that means that Richard Allen is a very manipulative man. And this is a man, right, who would have been bold enough, who would have been comfortable enough, because I feel like this is somebody who visited that area often, to pull this crime in the middle of the day, confident that they can get those girls down the steep incline, that they can get them across that river. The river is not this huge river, right? But it is the middle of the afternoon, and get them into this wooded area, which everybody that knows it agrees that's a pretty secluded area, right? Do what he did, stage the crime scene, right? Why is one sock missing and what's described as a pair of underwear, right? Listen, look at the happy face killer. 14 months after he murdered somebody, he was able to tell them where to find her purse. And it was still, they just didn't go far enough out in the crime scene. That was just right. Or, you know what I mean? When, if you're going to try and throw somebody off and you're going to stage the crime scene to throw the police off your trail, there doesn't have to be a lot of rhyme and reason as to why this particular clothing goes in the river. But this girl is fully dressed, right? I think the biggest thing is the defense is claiming that Richard Allen doesn't mess with Odinism at all, can't come up with a particular ritual in Odinism that requires human sacrifice. And I don't understand why Odinites would be torturing the guy that's taking the fall. That's what I don't understand. And that is how I want to transition into this next section, right? Into the next segment. Okay, I get it. I get it why the defense wants this to be Brad Holder. I saw photos of Brad Holder's Facebook around that time. And, he's got kind of a bulky build, right? He's got a bulky build to where, he could possibly be bridge guy. You know what I mean? So not only that, but Brad Holder he's clearly an Odinite. Allegedly he's a white nationalist. And his son was dating Abby. And then here you have, and I'll call his wife, estranged wife. They don't live together. Here's his wife. She's telling police, listen, he's got pictures of Abby in his phone, right? Now, according to the defense, Brad Holder, when he was interviewed just days after the murder, said that he never met Abigail. Then later, years later, he said he met her twice. And then he says he met her 3 times. So I really get it, right? I really get why the defense wants Brad Holder, right? But why is the defense saying that it has no access to the photos that Brian Holder posted on Facebook that mimic the crime scene? So where did these photos come from? Because if the photos were snatched, let's say by amateur sleuths, and Brad Holder knows this, well, he probably would have deleted his Facebook page, but usually things can be lifted forensically. So the defense is saying they can't find these photos where Brad Holder put up that mimic the crime scene. I think that because the police are saying that Brad Holder says in a deposition, the police confiscated my phone. My son Logan handed over his phone, and the cops are saying, right, we probably would have looked through his phone, but we didn't do a data dump, right? We don't have a data dump, and we don't have any information on the information on his phone. I think that's what allowed the narrative to grow. See, that's why I said Brad Holder is Delphi's Helena Stokely. In 1980, right, Dr. Robert, McDonald said that 4 people broke into his house, his apartment, and murdered his family. And he said one of those people was a woman, and she wore a large floppy hat, and that she wore these thigh-high boots, and that they were carrying candles, and the woman was saying, kill the pigs. Now, keep in mind, it was a rainy night. There were no tracks of mud. It's a small apartment, but just so happened on that base, there was a woman who wore a floppy hat and thigh-high boots. And once a reward was offered, a man said that he saw her in the area. It was, what, 30 years later before he died that he admitted that he lied, that he wanted the reward money. And Helena Stokely, she was diagnosed a schizoid. She was known, according to people, for telling fanciful stories. And there were times when people were feeding her things and offering her things. As a drug addict, she would tell them what she wanted to hear. And she liked the attention from being involved in a high profile case. And 40 years later, the family still has to fight the story of Helena Stokely, because the story that the real killer told happened to kind of sort of fit somebody. And when you ask people, how can people, right, walk into an apartment with candles lit in the rain? Wouldn't the rain put out the candles? Right? Why is there no mud in the apartment? Why is there nothing physical left from 4 people in this apartment? And he said that he fought with them. So let's look at this, right? Who says that they saw Brad Holder at the crime scene? Anywhere near the crime scene? According to the defense, Brad Holder, right, his alibi wasn't fully vetted. The man was at work. His time card says he was at work. The woman at Human Resources says she's the only one that can change the time. And the defense says, well, because we don't have a video of his car pulling up, of his truck pulling up and his truck leaving, right? We're just going to say that we still believe that somebody else could have clocked in and out for him. Then the defense says that Brad Holder got his gang, Pat Westfall and them, to start the ritualistic murders before he got off work. The defense offers nothing to show how they know that. So when people say to me, the phone, the video that Libby took has been messed with, it's been altered. And I'll say, well, show me. Well, show me. There was a case the state of Wisconsin versus Todd Kenhammer. And Todd Kenhammer says that a metal pipe that was flew off the back of a truck that was in front of him, came through his windshield, beat the crap out of his wife, and killed her. Do you know that there was an expert that got up there and said that that was entirely possible, even though that woman had bruises in the back of her head, even though her knuckles were scraped up and the windshield was just cracked? How did the pipe go through the windshield if it was just cracked? Do y'all believe a windshield can come off the back of a pickup truck, come through a windshield, beat a woman in the face, beat a woman in the back of the head, and kill her? But there was an expert who got up there to tell how that was completely possible. So when I'm told that there's an expert, right, that will testify that the phone, right, that the video, the 43-second video that Libby took was messed with, that it was somehow altered, right? The jury gets to decide, do I believe that expert? And juries can throw out expert testimonies in favor of their own common sense. An expert certainly helps. So if that video was altered and the police, like the defense said, are doing everything to keep from naming Brad Holder and his gang as suspects, I need to know why the police would rather Richard Allen be the suspect versus Brad Holder. And I need an expert, right, to convince me that that video was tampered with. And I'm not going for bull crap. So somebody said to me in the comment section that the girls recognized Bridge Guy. There's nothing that I've seen in that video that says those girls recognized Bridge Guy. I don't think you automatically, I've been a teenage girl, and I don't think you automatically turn on your phone and start recording if you recognize this guy that's walking toward you and behind your girlfriend. Libby thought he was creepy. Just like a lot of the other teenagers said that they passed by him and thought he was creepy. So nobody can prove that Brad Holder was not at work. Yet Richard Allen himself places himself at the crime scene, dressed like eyewitnesses said Bridge Guy was dressed. So the woman who's leaving the trail and says that she walked past Abby and Libby coming onto the trail, and that the only other person there was the only other adult on the trail was a man in a blue jacket and blue jeans. See, that's not a video. That's what that woman saw. Richard Allen said he went and stood out on, what is it called, the first platform to look at the fishes. The woman, the witness, said this guy, this adult, he stood on the first platform. So right now, the state has a pretty good chance of proving that Richard Allen was at the crime scene. And if Richard Allen is going to say, because that interview, the defense says, was not, they said that interview, that the first few seconds of that interview are missing, and that they cannot hear where Richard Allen was read his Miranda rights. So therefore, Richard Allen did not know that he was not, that he was free to leave, that he was free to end that questioning. If they can convince the court of that, then Richard Allen placing himself at the crime scene in that interview, it goes out. It goes out unless the defense can find another way to bring it in. And another way to bring it in is the witness who saw Abby and Libby and the only adult on the bridge. Allen has lived in that area for a long time. He's lived in that area for a long time. And I think that he would be comfortable. I think that he would know that he could get across that river quick enough, and he was pretty confident that nobody would see him. Right now, I'm leaning toward Allen, right? When the defense says, we didn't get this, it took the state this long to bring us this, the defense didn't give us that, right? Well, if you believe the defense is leaking evidence, you're going to hesitate to give them things. Is it right? No, it's not right. But do I believe that that a lot of evidence got leaked through the defense? Yes, I do. And is that right? No, that's not right. I believe a lot of evidence got leaked through the defense. So the defense attorneys that I worked for, I've never seen ships run tighter. And according this defense firm, they've got 3 leaks. 3 leaks. If you keep a good working relationship with the prosecutor, it serves your client. If the prosecutor keeps a good relationship with defense attorneys, it serves the state. Instead, these defense attorneys have openly accused these prosecutors of colluding to put the wrong man in prison, of intentionally destroying evidence that leans toward his client being innocent. I don't think that that's developing a good working relationship. She said me and mines, he was watching the fish swim in that park on that day, and then he confessed to deleting those girls. Listen, I know that a lot of people want to get into a lot of fanciful things, but that's asking me to ignore evidence that does exist for evidence that people are just claiming exists. So not only that, Richard Allen, he said that no one else has access to his firearm. And according to the state, they've matched the bullet at the scene with the firearm. I've told y'all I don't put much stock in tool marks. The phone evidence will prove Allen lying about the timeline or the checking of a ticker. The phone data will prove this. I think so, Al. I think so, Simon. I think so. Now, yeah, it would be better to have a data dump of Brad Holder's phone, of Logan's phone. But if Brad Holder can say in a deposition, I handed over my phone, he can tell you what the phone number was and what the phone company was, and you can at least go and get data from the phone company and you can see if activity increased between Holder and Westfall, right? And somebody had brought up a bunch of, right, how these people had multiple cell phones and this, that, and the other. Let me see if I can find this for y'all, because you know what? You want to talk about multiple cell phones. During that search warrant served on Richard Allen, how many cell phones do y'all have? Right? If somebody came to your house, right? How many cell phones do you have? Because they took 12 cell phones out of Richard Allen's house. 12. Now, you see, right, the GPS system at the bottom, the third from the bottom, a motorcycle cover, an Aquafina water bottle. That's interesting. Do they believe that they have some sort of DNA in these murders? Why take an Aquafina water bottle? I want to show you something else I think is interesting. Okay, so we know they took all of these knives, you know? And I'm going to tell you something. I told you, my dad, my brothers, right? My son, his father, right? Listen, they have a lot of knives. They have a lot of guns. If I'm on that jury, that's not even weird to me, right? We talked about that, right, Simon? You know, the 3 pair boots. Okay. So is this the one, a miniature katana? So there's the 3 pair boots, the 10 pair of gloves. That's not what I was looking for. What is it I was looking for? They're they removed boxes of ammunition. Okay, look at the top. Look at the top of this, y'all. You see the bold print, right? And you see where it says a 40 caliber S&W cartridge found in a wooden keepsake box. They list other cartridges that they took out of that house. They list boxes of ammo, right? Do y'all think like a cartridge in something called a keepsake box is strange? Do y'all think so? You know, so I think 12 cell phones. I think the Aquafina water bottle is their DNA. The carpeting that they took out of the trunk of his car, the passenger seat of his car, right? Do they believe that some of the girls' hair something was transferred to Alan. But that Aquafina water bottle makes me think DNA. Now, you guys hear fur baby? Simon, I think it's complete crap that he was walking and he was looking at his phone and he didn't pay attention. He just know that he passed right some juvenile girls. I think if you're looking down, it's because you don't want people to see your face, right? I think that I I I don't think he was as aloof as he claims, right? I really don't think he was as aloof as he claims. Okay, okay. I took notes for y'all. I took notes for y'all. So most of this I got from the second motion to dismiss. So I do think that because Brad Holder didn't admit until 7 years later that he'd actually met Abby, right? I do think that he fed into his own suspicion. Patrick Westfall's interview by the FBI, the defense is very upset that it was not recorded or videotaped. And the defense says that Pat Westfall basically he wiped his phone, right? That the only thing visible on Pat Westfall's phone is the day that the police called to set up the interview, which would take place a week later. And the data ended at him getting to that police station. Well, that says he already had the phone when the police called him to set up the interview. But let's say instead of the defense says we don't know if he got a new phone, we don't know if he data dumped his phone. My guess is he data dumped his phone. And let me tell y'all something. It's very possible that you data dump your phone because you conspired to commit a double homicide of two teenage girls. I dropped that phone in acid, right? But it's possible somebody could data dump it, right? But let me ask you something. You're innocent, you've committed no crime, but you've come up as a person of interest. Would you data dump your phone before you handed it to the police? Right? Because I saw a little talk show on television. It was a game. It was a game. And what the man would do is he would walk up to people on a New York City street and he would say, I will give you $500 cash right now if you let me go through your phone. More people told him no than yes, right? Do maybe you get a prescription pill because you have back problems. Maybe your cousin sent you a text message and said that they couldn't sleep, blah, blah, blah. They asked you for one of the pills. That's in your phone. Maybe you smoke pot. And if I go through your phone, I can see where you're meeting the weed man, right? How do I know that in your phone, you're not saying that your daughter is recuperating fine from deciding not to have that baby? How do I know I'm not going to read, we need to put our son in rehab? See, there are a lot of reasons that people will data dump their phone. And how about, oh my God, I'm an Odinite, and people are saying that Odinites committed this murder. I didn't kill anybody. Let me get this Odinite stuff out of my phone. Am I saying it's smart? Right? Why would you be a person of interest, legend? Right? I think that when police approach a person and ask questions, the first thing that that person should say is, am I suspected of a crime? Am I under arrest? Am I free to go? But you've got a whole little town of conspiracy theorists who have gotten leaked crime scene photos and who have decided that this is a ritualistic murder. And Patrick Westfall is, by all accounts, an Odinite. And one of his good friends, Brad Holder's son, Logan, dated one of the victims, legend, right? So I didn't know anything about Odinism. The ACLU, or I forget who, is saying that yes, white nationalists are adopting, right, these old belief systems, these ancient belief systems, and attaching white nationalism to it. You know, So look at Legend. Did you hide the gun? I don't have a gun. No. But I think that by police being so obstinate with the defense by refusing to say that even that Brad Holder or Pat Westfall were persons of interest. Well, they won't say they're suspects. They might say persons of interest. I don't know. But they won't say suspect when they were deposed, right? Because they don't want that thrown back at them at trial. So right now, I right now I see some certain things in common where it could be that the real killer wants to throw the police off of his or her trail. And so they stage the crime scene. And that's why, right? I say that right now, to me, Brad Holder is Delphi's Helena Stokely. The defense is upset that Elvis feels right was not questioned at all. Well, I read in another document that Elvis Fields was questioned. But even the defense says that Elvis Fields pretty much was just a little puppy dog behind, imitating Brad Holder. And like I said, and if Pat Westfall, according to Amber Holder, has all of the connections, and Brad was scared, and Pat'll kill you, that sounds like Pat is the leader. So that's what it is, guys, right? It's the Brad Holders alibi. Nobody's saying that they saw Pat Westfall, Elvis Fields, Messer. Nobody's saying that they saw any of these people anywhere near or around the crime scene. You know what I mean? And I think that the defense just saying Brad Holder, right, told his gang to jump the ritualistic murder off before he got off work. Well, you got to put something behind that. How do you know that? So right now, I don't know if our favorite judge, Judge Fran, should allow Brad Holder to be introduced as an alternate suspect to this crime. Say Pat may be the leader, but Alan is the perp. Me and mine is convinced that Alan did it. I just really want to know about these 12 cell phones. I want to know, right? The car. What do y'all think about his car was backed in suspiciously, like he didn't want anybody to see the license plate. I don't know. If it's like better parking spots and it's kind of backed into a dark little corner, like I need a picture of this to say it was backed in suspiciously. I've got a neighbor that's got a hoopty and he's got an alarm on it and he backs that baby in every time he parks it just because he loves his car. So, too big. Thanks for stopping in. Simon, you said that phone evidence is going to do it. If his head was down and wearing a hat, would you agree a witness would find it hard to identify eye color and hair color? Kim Riley claimed this happened in July 2017. It would be extremely, extremely difficult, Simon, and none of the other witnesses that saw Bridge Guy said that they could describe him that well. And I think that Bridge Guy definitely didn't want his hair color and his eye color seen. I've seen you bring that up before, Simon. It bothers you. But I told you there are people who will say anything to become involved in a high profile case. They do they really put the light in your face, Legend? Backed in for a quick getaway and possibly to keep his license plate from being seen. But I mean, it's not like you maybe couldn't have narrowed down the car. But yeah, a quick getaway. There are a lot of people who believe that Richard Allen is guilty, that he went there to do what he did. That he went, and I look at it and I thought about it. When I would visit my cousins in a small town, right? We would walk kind of back and forth. It wasn't an old railroad, but we would walk back and forth, so it looks boring, but teenagers kind of will take anything and turn it into a hangout. And I read where Abby and Libby's classmates said that before those murders, that they also used to walk from one end of that bridge to the other. And of course, everything changed in Delphi after the murders. Those girls said, now my mom says that, an adult has to be with us. This crime changed that town. It changed that town. So yeah, but I think Simon agrees with me in mines. Right now, all I know is I'm not convinced that it was that it was Brad Holder in this gang. I need more. Legend says he'd rather be in the hospital than the pen. Legend, they're gonna hit those people with Thorazine. That's what you said, right? They're gonna hit them with that Thorazine. So I don't know. I don't know. They can keep you in there forever, but if you're charged with double homicide, if Richard Allen is found guilty, he's not coming home at all. And I don't think he has a chance. I don't think that he's incompetent to stand trial. I think he understands the charges against him. I definitely do. Whether or not he can assist his attorneys, they've got other complaints. They've got other complaints. No privacy when they visit him in the prison, all of that. I think that the guards smacked him up a little bit? Yeah. Do I believe the inmate Baston who testified that the guards and the inmates called him, kid killer? Yeah. But I don't believe that he's being treated like a prisoner of war. So that's it. Thanks for stopping by, Simon. Thanks, Legend and me and Mines, as always. Too Big in the Clouds. I hope you enjoyed it, Too Big. And so for this video, these lives have great replay value. So if you're stopping in on the replay, do me a favor. Before you go, like this video. I'll see you guys the next time. Have a good evening. Bye.